Are you more of an analytical type? Do you prefer black and white over gray? Are you in, maybe you're in IT, maybe a scientist, maybe an engineer? Um, and if you're in those professions, do you consider yourself creative? I don't know. That's what I want to talk about today in this Car Talks. So I've been listening to a podcast recently on the Freakonomics podcast, and they were talking about trying to study creativity. And that got me thinking that they were talking about creativity in different professions, because typically creativity is meant for it's typically defined by artists and anybody in the creative arts. When you think of creativity, you don't think of an accountant or a scientist or an engineer, all of the typically left brain thinkers. But one thing that really stuck out on my mind with this most recent podcast, this most recent episode, was that Stephen Dubner was asking the interviewee. He said, like, well, what do you think is the most creative process there is? And this guy said, I can't remember his name, he said coding. And I'm like, coding? That's something that I've actually considered myself before as a very creative process. It's almost like art, because just like he was saying, coding is coming up with your own sort of language from nothing. We're giving whatever language you're using, we're given a certain base set of tools, and then we can use those tools to build things that nobody else, you can do it. Just if you know code, you can build a program or build a script or whatever you're doing in dozens or hundreds of different ways. You can choose to put a loop here, or an if-then statement here, or add some validation here, or whatever you're doing. And it is a very creative process, and it's something that I think that a lot of people in the tech industry don't really think about. They kind of get into this mindset of I'm not creative, I am logical. All those creative guys are just pie in the sky, always with their head in the clouds sort of people, and that has no use in our industry. Frankly, I was like that years ago. I defined myself as an IT guy, as an engineer, as somebody that ones and zeros, black and white. Everything was either right or wrong, and there was no gray. There was no sort of like maybe sort of stuff. It was always that, and I still struggle with that to some degree now. But as I've gotten more experience, and as I've went through all the life experiences that I've had in jobs and business and everything like that, I've started to realize that creativity is extremely important, even for an IT person, anybody in that industry, because if you let yourself, you get so left-brained, logically thinking that you never even attempt to try to think about something that may be different than what you're currently thinking about. Let me try to think of a good example here. So let's just say that let's say you're writing a piece of code, a certain example. So let's say you are writing a piece of code that displays an image on the screen. I don't know, something like that. And you have a library or a function that displays this image on the screen. And let's say that you've spent dozens and dozens of hours trying to figure out the best way to display this image on the screen. And through your dozens and dozens of hours of research and trial and error and all this information that you've gathered, that you've frankly wasted time on, but we'll get to that, you frankly wasted time on, you then present this image every time somebody says present this image on the screen, or they have a requirement for a program or whatever. you use this library or this function that you have to present this image on the screen, because I know that I've done all the work. This is the best way, the most efficient way, the fastest way to display this image on the screen. Okay, so you do that every time. Then somebody comes along, requirements come along and say, display this image on the screen. You display this image on the screen, but what you don't realize is that there could be a completely different way to not even to get around displaying the image on the screen. Trying to think of a good example of when this will be. So let's just say that the program displays an image on the screen so the user can review review a process, review some kind of output that the program is doing. Every time it says display an image on the screen, you use your little built-in library to do it. And you do it, and you say, this is the best way to do it, this is the best way to do it, this is the best way to do it. And somebody, questions you, nope, this is the best way to do it. When somebody creative comes around and tries to think deeper into that and think, why are we even displaying the image on the screen? Why can't we get something like, artificial intelligence or some other kind of script or some other kind of automation routine just to do this review? All we need to do is talk to the users, see what they're looking at, and then we just make that in code, so we don't even need to display the image on the screen. Just remove it. If you're not creative, if you're not constantly thinking about different ways to accomplish the same task, you get caught in this black and white mindset, and you think that this is the right way to do it and that is the wrong way to do it, and you're not open to other suggestions. You're not open to anything else, because that's gray. If you made up your mind that this is black, this is white, and nothing ever can be in between there. If you get that mentality, there's so many different solutions out there to the same problem that you kind of block yourself off of the mindset. I know it's hard coming from me being an engineer for so long, left brain thinker. It is extremely hard because we're people like me, we're not born creative. It's kind of a learned concept, because we think in school, in our job, especially in operations, we think we have to keep this server up. That's it. We have to keep this server up. We have to keep these services running. We have to do this. Okay, but you don't realize that. There are probably thousands of different ways to do the same thing, to keep this service up, whatever you're doing. And if you let yourself think like there is only one wrong way and one right way, especially when somebody else offers something to you, offers a suggestion, you don't even think about it. You have to keep an open mind. You have to think about things, and you have to be creative in coming up with your solutions. I think the only way to be creative is to have an open mind, to think about other ways to accomplish the same tasks. And going back to the coding example, coding is a great example, because a lot of us do deal with code in one shape, form, or fashion, and either you're writing a script in operations to do some kind of task in Exchange, or building a cloud environment, or something like that. There are a nearly infinite number of ways to get the same task done. It's all about getting the requirements and thinking creatively, having an open mind, and not just accepting things for what's initially presented to you. It's all about having an open mind, constantly coming up with ideas after ideas after ideas. You're going to have a lot of bad ideas, but it's all about quantity. You're bound to have some good ideas that work, and you have to pursue all of those, because to be creative, you cannot consider yourself creative if you have one creative idea, and it may be creative, but it may be shit too at the same time. It may not work at all, and then you may think, well, why did I attempt to do this differentiating this task a different way, when all it did was get it didn't work out. I got gotten onto by the boss, or got ridiculed by my coworkers or something like that. It's all about tenacity too. Do you have creativity? You're going to have bad ideas, but you're going to have some good ideas too. It's just all about keeping up with it and keeping going and just constantly trying new things. And once you do that over and over again, you start to get a pattern, feel a pattern of what works, what doesn't, and essentially you are creative. So that's all I want to talk about today.